It's a terrible case of domestic violence. And in the end of the day, it's not a coincidence that he's here. It's a consequence of his bad actions.
That's why prosecutors say they wanted 30-year-old Tavon Howard to get a lengthy sentence for his former girlfriend, Bradina Henson.
I'm happy. It's over for our family. This is what we was waiting for. We've been talking about this for a long journey.
I feel like in relationships, if anyone don't want you or there's some kind of animosity, if you can't come to terms about some kind of resolution of a healthy, positive relationship, then you should move on.
This is the heartbreaking story of Bradina K. Henson, a loving and caring mother of one and a beloved aunt, sister, daughter, and friend. Before her passing, Bradina had been in a tumultuous long-term relationship with a man named Tavon Howard, who frequently abused and mistreated her. After 10 years of loving him, Bradina decided she had enough and broke things off with Tavon, but he refused to accept her decision and retaliated in the most heartbreaking way possible. One night in 2022, Tavon went to his ex-girlfriend's house and executed her in cold blood. 2 days later, officers from Baltimore County Police Department tried to pull him over in his car, but he decided to flee. His decision to evade the police ultimately resulted in a multi-car crash in which several persons were injured. Fortunately, Tavon himself was caught and spent over a year in jail awaiting his sentence. In November 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In the early morning hours of April 13, 2022, 33-year-old Bradina Howard unpacked her groceries in preparation for an upcoming Easter gathering. In the days leading up to that night, she had made a major change in her life by breaking up with her long-term partner, then 29-year-old Tavon Howard. The couple had been dating for almost a decade, and according to Bradina's family, the relationship had been tumultuous from the start. Tavon had a lengthy criminal record, a history of domestic disputes, and a habit of destroying Bradina's property when he got angry. In one particular incident, he broke into her house, destroyed her furniture, tore off the walls, and shot bullets in the bed in a fit of anger. Another time, he totaled her car, which she had borrowed money from her mother to make a down payment for, and the incident left her feeling humiliated and embarrassed. In one of the most recent incidences of abuse before the breakup, Tavon reportedly spit on Bradina. When she spoke to her mother about the incident, she became concerned for her daughter's safety. Throughout the 10-year relationship, Bradina had put up with all kinds of disrespectful and disturbing behavior and chose to see the good in her boyfriend. But one day, Bradina decided she had enough of Tavon. Her main priority in life was her 14-year-old son, whom she loved with all her heart and frequently posted about on social media. But it wouldn't set a good example for him to continue to share her life with a man who refused to respect her. In an admirable display of self-love and maturity, she broke up with him and started a new chapter in her life. Considering Tavon's history as an abuser and his track record, Bradina took a series of preventative measures to protect herself, reportedly buying a legally licensed handgun and blocking off the back entrance to her house. She even asked her mother if one of her 3 Dobermans could stay with her, as Tavon was allegedly terrified of her mother's pets. Ultimately, they decided it wasn't a good idea for one of her Dobermans to stay with her, as it might have soiled her carpet. Bradina had taken all the necessary measures, but at around 2 a.m. on April 13th, Tavon showed up at her door at 14 Windjammer Court in Essex, Maryland. Against her best judgment, Bradina opened the door for him, which turned out to be the worst mistake of her life. At some point during the night, Tavon pulled out a handgun and shot his ex-girlfriend in the head, neck, and chest, ending her life instantly. The day after the hit, Bradina's 14-year-old son came home to find the lifeless body of his mother inside the house. Shocked, he called 911. And at around 7:45 p.m., officers from the Baltimore County Police Department arrived at the house. Bradina was immediately pronounced deceased at the scene. After her passing was announced, Bradina's family was completely devastated. She was known to everyone as a kind, loving, down-to-earth woman who lived to see her son happy. B, as her friends and family often called her, worked with children and adults suffering from developmental disabilities at the prestigious Kennedy Krager Institute, an affiliate of Johns Hopkins.
They described Henson as a nice, caring woman who worked with developmentally disabled children and adults.
As the family began to process the traumatic loss of Breakup Henson, the Baltimore County Police Department launched an investigation to find her assailant as soon as possible. Inside the house, police found several .45 caliber shell casings. They also obtained phone records and security footage of the area from that night, which helped reduce the pool of suspects to a single person, Tavon Howard. The disturbing surveillance footage showed him walking towards the house on the night of the hit, and with the weapon in hand, the cops tracked him down for questioning. It didn't take them long to find him, and at around 1:40 p.m. on April 15th, police attempted to pull him over in Baltimore City as he was driving along South Conklin Street. Instead of pulling over, however, Tavon did what any guilty man would do and fled from the cops. Despite his efforts, he only made it as far as the intersection of Hartford Road and Weaver Avenue, where he lost control of the car and caused a multi-car crash that left several innocent persons injured. Immediately after the crash, he attempted to flee on foot, but the police caught up with him soon after and immediately charged him with first-degree hit. Inside his car, the cops also found several controlled substances and a .45 caliber handgun. Just hours later, it was confirmed that this was the weapon he used to take the life of the ex-girlfriend. Tavon was immediately booked in the Baltimore County Detention Center, where he was held without bond until his court date several months later. During his first interrogation, when asked about the night of the hit, Howard reportedly responded, "I did not do anything. I was framed." On Sunday, April 24th, 2022, a celebration of Breakup life was held in the chapel of Vaughn Green Funeral Services in Baltimore, where her family and friends gathered to remember her and honor her memory by sharing stories about their times with her. Throughout the grieving process, the victim's family prayed that the assailant would be brought to justice for his heinous crimes. In June 2023, their prayers were answered when Tavon Howard's trial began. Before the trial, Assistant Public Defender Dante Salvi, who represented Tavon Howard, filed a motion to retry the case. He mentioned that the prosecutor was asking leading questions to corner his client into a false confession and that there were issues with the authentication of the surveillance videos that had been used to incriminate him. He also cited issues regarding ballistics testimony raised by a recent Maryland Supreme Court ruling as reasons to move the trial to a later date, but his pleas were dismissed by the judge. The trial was presided over by Judge Vicky Ballou Watts, who listened attentively to their impact statements, as well as the prosecutors and public defendants' arguments. "My daughter was a good girl. She didn't deserve this," Henson's mother, Felicia Wallace, said in court. She was one of the several relatives and friends who directed their statements at Howard while he sat at the defense table, reportedly showing little remorse and staring with a blank expression for his crime. "She did everything for you. You know she did," said Candice Henson, Breakuap's sister, to the assailant. Sadly, her relatives also mentioned that Breakuap's now 15-year-old son was struggling immensely after the passing of his mother. As one of the relatives revealed, he had been skipping school frequently and his grades had dropped significantly. Not only had he lived every child's worst nightmare by finding his mother deceased in the house, but he had suffered a brutal betrayal at the hands of Tavon, whom he trusted with the well-being of his mother. During the trial, Tavon's attorney attempted to gain the judge's sympathy by arguing that his client had grown up in an unstable household and suffered from a substance use disorder, and that sending him to prison for life would be detrimental to his two children. After carefully weighing the evidence and considering the testimonies, the judge found Tavon Howard guilty of premeditated first-degree hit, as well as 2 other gun-related charges. He was also found guilty on 15 other counts, ranging from possession of narcotics to evading arrest. On November 13, 2023, Judge Ballou Watts sided with the prosecution and sentenced Tavon Howard to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 25 years for the 2 gun charges. During the sentencing, the judge said, "Your heart seems so callous. That's what comes across." She said his inability to take responsibility for his actions, combined with his body language and facial expressions during his impact statements, raised doubts about his capacity for rehabilitation. The trial for the other 15 charges was postponed until April 2024, but in any case, Tavon will be spending the rest of his life in prison. Although no sentence could ever bring back Breakuap Henson, her family rejoiced after the judge made her decision, reporting that they had been waiting a long time for that day to come.
It's over for our family. This is what we was waiting for. We've been talking about this for a long journey.
Like many other tragic incidents this year, the passing of Breakup Howard has brought much attention to the fact that women all over the country are being left vulnerable at the hands of their vicious partners, and that more measures need to be taken to ensure the safety of persons of domestic abuse. May this heartbreaking story serve to open the eyes of those in positions of power to assist and aid to these devastating situations many women face on a daily basis. Rest in peace, Breakup Henson.